Hello everyone and welcome to Energy Talks. My name is Asha Sampath and today we are heading to Brazil, a country at the crossroads of some of the biggest energy shifts in the Americas. A heavyweight in oil and gas, yet also pushing some of the world's most ambitious renewable targets. A landscape full of opportunities, but also considerable challenges as it accelerates its energy transition. And to unpack it all, today we are joined by someone who is right at the center of the action. Olivier Barra-Bagnan, Country Chair and Managing Director, Total Energies Exploration and Production in Brazil. Let's dive in. Hello, Olivier, and thank you for joining. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Asha. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic, Olivier. Like I was just mentioning, the focus today is Brazil. And we know that Brazil is a country that is blessed with sunlight, with strong winds, immense hydro basins, and vast offshore oil reserves, right? So maybe let's start with the mix, the energy mix. How could you explain what makes this country so unique in its energy mix?
You're right, Asha. It's a unique country. First, it's a giant. It's in the top 10 globally in area, in population, but also in the size of its economy, in GDP. And it has really a particular energy mix. 50% of the primary energy production today in Brazil is renewable. Historically, it's hydroelectricity, it's biomass, ethanol from sugarcane. And recently, we've seen a lot of growth in, as you said, offshore oil, but also renewable electricity from wind and solar sources. Today, the electricity generation is more than 90% renewable in Brazil. It's really one of the greenest electricity grids in the world.
So this is the current figures, right? So how do you see it evolving in the next decade?
Well, we see growth in Brazil, notably in wind and solar production, but also in oil and gas, and there's still a trajectory for growth towards the end of the decade.
All right. So maybe we are seeing some figures here on the screen appearing. And what would you like, just a quick comment on those figures?
The main point about the electricity generation is really the green electricity matrix. Hydro is a base. It's a flexible power base. It's backed when low hydro years come by a natural gas, but we see a very strong growth in wind and solar from the quality of the natural resource in Brazil, in the northeast of the country in particular.
Well, Olivier, you've been in Brazil for a year now. So how is it going?
Very well.
Fantastic. So maybe what moment, project or encounter has best captured for you the scale and the stakes really of Brazil's energy transition?
Well, I'll give you two, one in oil, one in electricity. One in oil, it's really the Mero project. It was producing nothing just 8 years ago, and today it's producing 650,000 barrels per day from 5 platforms that we started almost every year for the last 5 years. So it's a really impressive development led by Petrobras with Total Energy. In electricity, it's my visit a few weeks ago to Fortaleza, to the Casa dos Ventos Operation Control Center, a very modern facility with many screens where they control hundreds of wind turbines all over the north of Brazil. A really impressive and technological place.
So we'll get back to that. And maybe for now, let's just zoom in on oil and gas, which is a vital part of Brazil's energy mix. As maybe we can see here on this graph, there are some interesting figures that we've seen. And maybe tell us what it means in practice if you could look at the consumption and the production. So what can you say about that?
Really, the production of oil and gas in Brazil has grown over the last few years thanks to those discoveries in the pre-salt. So in 2000, today, the crude oil production in Brazil is about 4 million barrels per day. It has become a net exporter a few years ago, a very large net exporter. And it's a key factor in the export-trade balance of Brazil. And this trajectory is bound to continue. The companies are still deploying more platforms offshore to keep growing the production to a level of about 5 million barrels of oil per day by 2030.
Right. So, Olivier, we'll get back to that. Let me just probably move on and to illustrate what it means in practice. Let's take a look at the Lapa field, a pre-salt reservoir lying nearly 2,000 meters beneath the Atlantic, about 270 kilometers off the Brazilian coast. Take a look.
Total Energies was the first international oil company to operate a producing field in the pre-salt, named Lapa.
The reservoir of Lapa field is a pre-salt carbonate reservoir. That means that you have thick layer of salt above the reservoir, which actually helps us to recover more oil. In order to optimize production, we are going to develop the southwest part of the reservoir. This is called the Southwest Project. The project is currently being developed.
Well, Olivier, we've just heard the project is still in progress. And I also heard a figure, 25,000 barrels a day coming soon, right?
Very soon, yes.
Okay, so how does this expansion really align with your strategy of focusing on low cost, low carbon assets? And maybe for our audience, what does low carbon really mean in practice for a deep water project like Lapa?
First of all, low cost. The pre-salt reservoirs in Brazil are really special in terms of productivity. One well can produce up to 50,000 barrels per day. It's exceptional. Nowhere in the world you see that. And so you can produce a full platform with only 4 wells. It reduces your costs. Then low emissions. Deep water projects benefit from all of our technologies that reduce emissions, close flares, electric FPSOs. This reduces the emission. And in Lapa in particular, we've made very big progress in reducing methane emissions with first measurement campaign with satellites or drones. And we are currently installing permanent methane monitoring, hundreds of sensors that will detect very small leaks so that we are able to repair them instantaneously. This will contribute to our very strong reduction in methane emission. At company level, we have reduced by 55% our methane emissions, and it's going even further down to 80% reduction in 2030.
Very insightful, Olivier, but I'm curious, how do you balance this really dual narrative in your operations, contributing on the one hand to renewable leadership while participating in oil production growth on the other?
But really, it's the motto of the company, more energy and less emissions. The population growth in the world is continuing. Development comes with energy needs, so we need more energy for the world, and the company will grow its energy production in the next few years in oil, in gas, and in low carbon, notably renewable electricity. We've invested more than 20 billion euros since 2020 in low carbon, and we keep investing billions of dollars per year in renewable electricity in Brazil in particular.
Brilliant. Thank you, Olivier. But beyond oil, we mentioned it earlier, Brazil is a renewable powerhouse, the top 5 globally. So the country's clean electricity, we said it, come from hydro, wind, solar, biofuels. And Brazil has been really a global pioneer for decades in that. So my question is, why is this country performing so well in renewables?
First of all, it's a resource. You said it. It's a powerhouse. And the wind resource in particular is exceptional in the northeast of the country. There you can find an onshore wind farm with capacity factor of more than 50%. It's on par with offshore wind in the North Sea, much more expensive to develop. And it's almost twice the average capacity factor for onshore wind. So this makes a cheaper, more profitable development for developers like us. And this is a very strong point. Second point is a real government policy to promote the use of renewable electricity, subsidies and plans, and a very good local acceptability. There's a strong support from the population for the energy transition. And finally, there's really a network of local players, and Casa dos Ventos is one of those players that has developed this landscape with local partnership.
And this is perfect, because this is exactly what we're going to see. We'll have a look at this local player, Casa dos Ventos, one of the leaders of renewable energies in Brazil. So let's take a look.
TotalEnergies wants to partner with the leaders in renewables across the world. And today we're not only the largest developer of renewable assets in Brazil, but one of the largest investors. Brazil has one of the best wind resources in the world, specifically in the Northeast region. It's a very constant wind in terms of speed and direction. Rio do Vento is one of the largest onshore wind farms in the world. The magnitudes and the scale of the infrastructure gives us, in the end of the day, a very competitive energy for our clients. The global footprint of TotalEnergies brings us more portfolio of clients. And I think the technical knowledge and know-how of TotalEnergies in other derivatives of the energy transition, such as hydrogen, methanol, and SAF, also is beneficial for a growth towards a multi-energy company also here in Brazil.
That was very enlightening indeed. And Brazil's renewable boom has been driven by this strong local expertise that we see on the ground. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of Total Energies and why partnering with a local actor such as Casa dos Ventos matter?
You know, when we thought about this energy transition strategy and the importance of integrated power in this strategy, we identified a few countries, key countries, to deploy this strategy. The US, Europe, and Brazil are the key countries in this strategy. To enter there, you can build it from the ground up, or you can find a local player, and usually you gain a few years by finding a good local player. And this partnership started in 2022 with Casa dos Ventos is an example of finding the right local player, a very good renewable electricity developer with local knowledge, technical knowledge as well. They have started 20 years ago almost a campaign to identify the best areas to locate wind and solar farms. And today we are benefiting from this. And as we've seen in the video, we also bring our expertise in electricity trading that we've developed in Europe, in the US. We bring our expertise also and our network of clients, industrial clients, to be able to sell this renewable electricity to industrials in Brazil.
And obviously these local expertise are absolutely vital to accelerate Brazil's energy transition. Well, Olivier, we're talking about Brazil's clean energy, but we know that it has hit record highs, but it also has exposed a new paradox. At times we've seen that wind and solar have generated more power than the grid can handle, and this has created curtailments and creating really local imbalances. Maybe I would like to have your vision on that. What's driving this imbalance between demand and supply?
In many countries, when renewable electricity, especially intermittent sources, grow, it creates issues in the grid. In Brazil, in particular, most of the renewable electricity potential is in the northeast. Most of the consumption is in the south. And this puts a lot of pressure on the grid to connect the two. Additionally, distributed generation has grown a lot in the country, and it adds to the instability of the grid. So to fix that, there's not many solutions. And a lot of countries have had the same solutions. You need to invest in the grid, and you need to develop battery storage in particular. And this is what Brazil is currently doing.
Right. And it's not an isolated problem. We've seen that in other parts of the world.
It exists everywhere. Yeah. In China, it existed.
In Africa, in Kenya,
Europe, in Africa,
in South Africa. Yes, absolutely. This one on the future. How do you see Brazil managing its energy future? We see the landscape is so changing so fast. So how do you see the future?
Well, you know, Brazil, it's an energy powerhouse, but oil is in particular important for the economy. It's number one export in the country last year. So keep growing oil production for Brazil is key for its budget. But also keeping growing the renewable electricity generation is key to attract industries towards Brazil.
Right. And I know that Brazil's grid operator has already announced some plans of really expanding battery storage and transmission links between the north and south. Maybe this also can be a swift way.
Well, this is key to make the grid more resilient and more able to absorb this growth in renewable electricity generation. And we welcome all these initiatives, yes.
Olivier, if you had to compare Brazil with other fast-moving economies like India, South Africa, so what do you think South America is doing better or maybe lagging behind compared to those other geographies?
Actually, it's quite advanced, and because I think what makes Brazil so special is green electricity mix today, and 90% thanks to hydro. In other countries, renewables are displacing, renewables plus gas is displacing coal, and this is very beneficial for the emissions. In Brazil, you already have a green electricity matrix with both flexible hydro and renewables. And this is a huge potential for Brazil to attract industries that are looking for green electricity, in particular data centers, that really should find in Brazil the perfect place to get the cheap green electricity that they need.
Olivier, we've spoken a lot about energy transition in emerging markets, but it's not just about carbon, it's also about inclusion. So I'm quite curious to hear how the private sector is contributing to energy access and social development across South America. As I'm sure you have things to share with us.
Yeah, there's numerous initiatives by the company, but more generally in the country. There's a big push by the government to make energy more affordable. I think it's always a very good sign where a government are both was attentive to the need for affordability, energy security at the same scale as sustainability. And on this, the Brazilian government is very focused on affordability in particular.
Well, Olivier, thank you very much for joining us today and shedding some light on how Brazil is shaping its next chapter in the global energy transition. It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure as well. Thank you to all of you for watching us, and see you next time for another episode of Energy Talks.